Today's episode is sponsored by No Strings Attached e-News, your premier online magazine with interesting and informative articles from lifestyle, entertainment, and news worldwide. Visit the website to find out what's buzzing on nsaen.com. Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Co-founder and CEO of Geanco, Afam Onyema, is today's guest. Afam will talk about his mission to transform and save lives in Nigeria.
Afam Onyema, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
So great to have you. Let's get started and go way back. Afam, can you give us a glimpse into your childhood?
Sure. I am the second of four kids. My parents are Nigerian. My dad was born in Nigeria along with my mom. And my dad was inspired by a British missionary doctor. Nigeria was a colony of Britain at the time, to become a doctor himself. And so he began training to be a medical doctor, did his medical residency, and then met my mom in Nigeria. And they came over. They got married in Nigeria and came over in the mid-'70s. My dad matched with a hospital in Chicago, Old Cook County Hospital. And he made this promise to his family and that missionary doctor, I'm going to come back. I'm not going to be one of these immigrants who leaves and contributes to the brain drain. And so they planned to just stay for 4 or 5 years, raise some money, learn modern medicine, and then go back to Nigeria. But then, as I mentioned, I'm the second of 4 kids, and they realize, gosh, our kids have amazing opportunities here in the States to go to great schools, have great lives. Nigeria was really falling apart at the time with religious violence and coups, and unfortunately not that much different than it is right now. So they made this promise to us to stay and really give us a chance to live out our dreams. My dad always told us about this missionary doctor, about this promise he made to go back and help save lives. And so that really resonated with me throughout my childhood and into adulthood.
Wow. Well, a couple of things resonated with me that you just said. I had written a memoir and donated some memoirs to a school in Uganda. And people just don't realize what goes on in other countries, because we were going to have a meeting on a Zoom meeting. And he said, we can't do it for a while now because the election didn't go well. So I said, I don't understand. Well, schools are going to be closed for a while. I mean, he told me that during the Zoom meeting, the doors could have been broken down or something. So when you talk about these coups and different things that go on in other countries, we really here are kind of spoiled that we don't have things to that degree.
Absolutely.
Love the fact that all you're talking about is your father paying things back and paying it forward, and how wonderful to say, I'm not going to be a one and done and add to the brain drain. And you mentioned some schools there. So you mentioned schools. I'm going to mention some schools. So do these schools, Harvard University and Stanford Law School, mean anything to you?
Yes, 2 schools have probably made what they think are probably big mistakes in admitting me. I went to Harvard for undergrad, and it was really there that I had an idea to really think about how can I be part of my father's dream and to get back to Nigeria. The AIDS epidemic was raging in Africa at the time. This is in the early 2000s. And so I thought more and more about how I could be a part of addressing that epidemic in Nigeria. And Bono of U2 was one of our graduation speakers. And he was, at the time, and still is, so passionate about making poverty history and development in Africa, and just really is walking the walk. And he gave this powerful speech to our class about, you of all people, graduates of Harvard, should be joining me in this fight and be inspired to help. And if we can, he said, Americans put a man on the moon, we can end poverty and certainly save lives in Nigeria and Africa. And so that got me thinking more and more about that. And eventually, a couple of years of working, I went to Stanford Law School. And that's when I really got inspired. It's in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, and just this atmosphere of an energy of whatever you want to do, you can do it from here. Like this, people had dreams that became reality. Someone thinks of a way to stay connected and it becomes the next great, social media company or what have you. So I went to law school there thinking I'd become a lawyer, make some money, eventually get back to helping my dad, either financially or what have you. But we did our first medical mission. I was in school, but I couldn't go, but I helped fundraise for it. A team in Nigeria, a team of surgeons in Chicago did hip and knee replacements in Nigeria. And they came back and told these stories about lives changed and how amazing it was. And I thought, gosh, if I could have that be my mission every single day, how can I make lives better? How can I commit myself to that? It'd be both inspiring and terrifying, which I think is a great way to live life, to be every day, every moment of your life, be both inspired and energized, but also a little terrified. And so turned down very lucrative, as my mom likes pointing out, very lucrative corporate law offers, and decided to do Geanco full time right after law school. I knew if I didn't start right away, I would never get to it. So, 17 and a half years later, here I am still at it.
Incredible stuff. And, it's interesting. I don't want to make you jealous, but Bono also appeared at my school. He performed at Mayfest at SUNY Albany. So listen, put that in your head. So he's done so much great work. And I will get to some of the celebrities, the many celebrities involved in your organization. So before we get into Geanco Foundation, you were named one of the top 10 most influential Africans in the diaspora. So tell us about that.
Well, it's a great honor, and I see it more as an honor recognizing the hard work my team is doing. And because, again, I can't do anything without both my team in Nigeria and also the donors that we have here. So I think they're just recognizing this work and honoring this work and elevating this work through that honor. And I really take it. It's a very humbling honor. I take it very seriously, and it's a commitment that I've made. And again, I think they're just elevating this work amongst all the other people they recognize to say, this person is part of this movement, part of this organization, which is helping to save and transform lives, especially for poor and vulnerable women and children. And again, it's something that I really have a deep, I'm really grateful for. And again, I just wanted to see it as a way of elevating this work as opposed to elevating anything I'm doing personally.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are either of your parents still alive?
They are. They're both still with us. My father, for years, would go with me on fundraising trips and trips to meet the governor in Nigeria and medical missions. So I have, a decade plus of memories of we're sidekicks in this work as we would travel around the country, raising money, going to conferences, and then going to Nigeria. He's in his 80s now, so I told him no more trips to Nigeria, certainly, and he'll make the trip to our Los Angeles gala from Chicago, but otherwise he's retired. And my mom has been just my biggest cheerleader, both in this work and in life. And just she's been she was really worried at the beginning because she knew what a hard road it is to raise money and build an organization. And she's like, we left Nigeria because it's so crazy and chaotic, and now you're diving right back in. So, I guess if your mother doesn't think that way, then you should be worried. The fact that she does think that way and worries about me at that level I think is a good thing. So she continues to be my biggest fan and our biggest kind of supporter in terms of, being proud and bragging about the work that we're doing to her friends and colleagues. So yeah, they've been great. And it's just really great to see them to be able to impact people that they know and their own relatives and extended members of our family on both sides, on my mom's side and my dad's side, through this work.
So you've accomplished so much. Is it safe to say that mom is no longer hanging on to look at these lucrative jobs?
She'll occasionally make the money. She'll tell me, are you able to afford this? I'm like, Mom, I do get a salary. I can afford to pay my rent and eat. And but I think that'll never go away. I could be, 20 years from now, she'll still be worried about that.
Yeah. Well, I have a cousin who is a college professor in Chicago, and she works a lot with prenatal care and healthcare, and really fights for the tremendous difference between people with money and prenatal care and people not with money, and African Americans and Hispanics and things of that nature. But something like that really takes over your life, because when you hear about it, it's one thing. Oh, it's sad, this and that, that's too bad. Then you change the channel, you're on to the next thing. But when you're steeped in it, either teaching a college class or you're in it and you're in the countries, it takes on a life of its own. So tell us more about the Geanco Foundation and why you're there and how it started and what work that foundation does for so many.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, my dad is he until he retired, he was an OBGYN. And so that idea of safe delivery, motherhood, babies being born at the very critical moment of life has always been important to our family. And so it's one of the huge pillars of our work. I mentioned we did a surgical medical mission during law school, and that continues. We continue to bring surgeons over we did hip and knee replacements for years. Now we do internal surgeries, gallbladders, appendix, removing tumors and what have you. But then we decided we really wanted to lean into mother and child, infant and maternal mortality. It devastates Nigeria. Nigeria has one of the worst maternal and infant mortality problems in the entire world. And you really can't get society have it advance in any meaningful way if women are worried about losing their lives or the lives of their children because they'll have too many children to kind of compensate for the fact that, well, I'll have 7 because I'll probably lose 3. And so we really focus on that. We have these container clinics, take 40-foot shipping containers and turn them into solar powered rural clinics and can put them in the most challenged areas of Nigeria. So they're able to be where the community's at. And we have local nurses and midwives run them. So we have 6 of those clinics. As I mentioned, we continue to do the surgical missions. And on the education side, through an actor I met here and a British Nigerian actor, David Oyelowo, we created the David Oyelowo Leadership Scholarship for Girls. And that is to help girls who have been directly impacted by terrorism, either orphaned or abandoned, driven into camps. And we put them right back into school. We have 4 partner schools throughout the country, and they get 6 years of tuition, education, leadership training. We partnered, and we talk about some of our supporters a little bit later, but we partnered with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to give them menstrual health and mental health. And we also do leadership training, STEM education. And then we help the schools themselves by donating computer labs and libraries and sports facilities. So I love the fact that we get to impact on the medical side as well as the education side, especially for young girls.
It's such outstanding work, and you do mention, some of the supporters. So let's talk about that support that you received, because the work is just so necessary and so needed. I can't read the entire list because I have a party to attend in a month, and I want to keep it on. The list, it looked like a copy and paste from who's who in the world. So I'm just Oprah Winfrey, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle. You just said Angelina Jolie, and so many more. So how did that happen?
Yeah, no. And so when I decided, as you mentioned, I went to law school at Stanford. During my summers, I worked for law firms in Los Angeles. So I thought I was going to do corporate law in Los Angeles for a while and then move on to the next thing. When I decided to do Geanco full time, I thought, well, if I stay with the plan of moving to LA, I can get the entertainment community involved. And that really helps counteract the negative stereotype that Nigeria has as corrupt and why would I want to give my money there? But if you get people is as generous and as well known as Oprah and Jimmy Kimmel and Benedict Cumberbatch and those folks to support you, that lets people know, oh, I can support this because Oprah's supporting it or what have you. And it's another way to raise funds and awareness. And so we really leaned into that when I moved down to LA in the fall of 2007, just began to build relationships and really tried to get to know people as people. One thing I discovered through all this work with these big names is that they're first and foremost just humans. They have moments of doubt, they have moments of worry, they have anxiety, they're joyful people, they're kind people, but they're humans. And so I try as much as I can to interact with them, recognizing, yes, there are certain aspects of your life because you're famous that are different. But in the end, I really hold them to account. It's amazing. You talk to a big name actor and say, you promised to do this video, or you promised to show up here. I really need you to show up. And actually like, oh, thank you. Like someone who's calling me to account and not kind of kowtowing. And so just over the past, decade and a half, I built these relationships and then people who believe in us and are working with us are so generous to reach out to their famous friends, and kind of the circle grows and grows. And, we obviously punch well above our weight in terms of the quality of those names, those big names. And again, it's just a humbling privilege that people who could literally do anything and are getting dozens of requests a day deem us worthy of their support and their outreach and their partnership. And I take that very seriously. And again, it's a great honor.
Well, to have that kind of support just in and of itself is just tremendous. So it's all wonderful that you are where you are. But on my show, we often talk about the story behind the glory.
Mhm.
So what struggles did you have to overcome in order to achieve success for the foundation and make so many phenomenal positive changes in Nigeria?
Well, I think people hear the story of, oh, you gave up the lucrative law firm life to start a foundation. That's great. And everyone, heard about that and must have thrown a bunch of money at you. And then all these stars started falling literally from trees. You're walking down the street and, like a, like a Marvel superhero drops in your lap and you start raising money. But the truth is the first 2 years I worked on Geanco full time were the worst of my life. You go from having a firm plan of I'm gonna make a lot of money and live in LA to making no money, having a bunch of debt and having to raise money and having to create something from scratch, literally from scratch, building a board, legally registering with different states and the government, working in a country as chaotic and challenging as Nigeria, kind of all by myself, and it was isolating, it was overwhelming, and it was painful. And asking for money and getting that rejection. People look at our website now and marvel at the names and the companies and what have you. But I heard no, 9 times out of 10 when I first reached out to people and tried to get this thing going, because you're pitching yourself. Like I couldn't give them anything. I'm saying, like, trust me, I can make this work. And the donors who gave us money early on are angels to me, because they were giving based on a promise, not on here's a clinic, here's a scholarship, here's Oprah, here's Prince Harry and Meghan. No, it's like, here's me. That's all I have is me, and trust me. And so I'm just really grateful. But it was incredibly challenging. I tell people, I get people who come to me a lot asking, I want to start a charity for this, or I want to, do this for my community. And I say, listen, I'm not going to tell anyone not to do anything, because no one tried to deter me from my dreams, but just realize how incredibly challenging and in some ways tedious, getting audited and building a board and having meetings and filing documents and making sure the receipt for the dinner you got with the donor is filed properly. And people overlook that, think it's all just kind of flash and dash and getting to go and meet the recipients of the charity and all that. And no, it's a lot of work. And I do not for a moment regret it. But I do recognize and realize that it was incredibly challenging, and it's a blessing that I'm even here talking to you again, almost 18 years later, still doing it and still having that same energy, and I'm still every day terrified and inspired, like almost 18 years later.
Well, you're transforming and changing lives, but people sometimes only see the glitz and the glamour. So now it's kind of selling itself. It's like that great car that when you test drive, you have to buy it because of the ride and the status and whatnot. But what can you tell us? Tell us from your heart, what transformations you saw that you sat back and said, it's all worthwhile, got to keep going, got to do more.
Yeah, and I think the blessing of my job is that I have to, I'm here and I'm fundraising and I'm kind of having meetings in the US, but then I also go to Nigeria twice a year for our medical mission and then to meet our girls and visit our clinics. And so I just get to meet the patients. Like I'm literally meeting the patients as they're going into the OR for surgery and then coming out. And you get to talk to their families. And, for our PIP and knee replacement missions, you hear stories about people who haven't been able to walk for decades or, spent all their money on quacks and literal witch doctors, and they come to us penniless and we're able to take care of them. And they're back to walking, back to school, back to work, taking care of their families. And these girls, our scholarship girls, are just they're my heart. Like, just you hear their stories about being abandoned or being neglected, driven to an internal displacement persons camp, an IDP camp, and having very little hope. And then they meet us and we connect with them. And then a year later, they're learning Shakespeare and they're learning about physics and the laws of gravity. And because one of our donors rallied the community to build a library, they're in the library all day and reading. And then we built a soccer field. They're out there playing soccer. And then we went recently with David Oyelowo, the actor, to do creative arts. And so they're learning about photography and acting and dance and painting. And you just get to see them as full people. And you just spend just a moment with those girls and you realize there's nothing I wouldn't do for them. So all the challenge and the constant scurry to raise funds and to get things going and to follow up with someone for the 11th time, I'll do it for the 12th time because I see those girls in my mind's eye and they're in my heart. And so I get over myself and my own fear of rejection or what have you, because those girls are worth a fear of rejection.
Well, you can't do what you do and have an ego, which is not easy to remove
Exactly.
an ego from any human being's soul and body. And the people, you say knee replacements and hip replacements, and if some of these people are younger, are these injuries or these deficits due at all to poor nutrition? Or poor medical care? What's the reason why they have these issues?
Yeah, it's a mix. You have patients who are just had an acute accident, a car accident, or at work, or felt literally like they're climbing trees to get fruit from a tree and they fall out, wear and tear. The younger folks could be playing soccer or what have you, and so you have a variety of issues. And because of malnutrition, the muscles are weak, and so the bones take on a lot of stress, and so that causes earlier stage arthritis and earlier stage issues with bones, because again they don't have the nutrition and the energy to be safe, and then they don't. You see them like not going to doctors regularly. So something that could have been easily corrected as a child, maybe, okay, put them in a cast for a few weeks or wear this brace or just walk differently. They're not getting it. And so they come to us and doctors are like, gosh, this could have been corrected when they were a teenager. But now because you didn't have that brace or didn't get that cast, you're now, your knees are messed up or what have you. So it's just those years that we're able to do that, again, it's just a life-changing thing. Like you have a new knee, it's another 25, 30 years, you can go back and do it. And we were one of the few organizations bringing that service to Nigeria because it is so expensive and so rigorous. So being able to do that for our patients, and now doing I mentioned the appendix and gallbladders and surgeries that, people have hernias that, that they've had for a decade, and being able to operate on them. Now we do more pediatric surgery, so removing tumors from kids and fixing congenital defects, and again, it's trying to give them the life that they're entitled to. That I feel that in some ways they're owed.
Oh, that's so incredible. And it's on a global scale. It almost sounds like, I said, we take things for granted here in the United States at times, but it's almost like a Jeopardy question. Things that the average teenager wouldn't say for $100 now. I get injured from getting fruit from a tree. So it's just something you wouldn't expect to hear someone say in 2025.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how much we don't know what we don't know, and all the work that you do and the lives you say, just incredible. It just keeps going and going. And tell us a little bit about the recent Creative Arts Summit for girls that you had in Nigeria.
Yes, yeah. So we've done a variety of things with our girls. The idea is, we started with 3 girls at one school. We now have 46 girls at 4 schools. And, besides education, we want to pour into them and have them truly be leaders. It's a leadership scholarship for a reason. And so they get leadership training regularly. We give them STEM education. We do the menstrual and mental health in partnership with the Archwell Foundation and Harry and Megan. And with David being the co-founder of the scholarship and having so many people in LA and Hollywood support it, we thought we should expose these girls, introduce these girls to the arts and, get them inspired in that way, especially since in Nigeria, parents can be so strict about, the arts are a waste of time. You get in there, learn, or even just, get in there, get some basic education and get married. But for these girls, I want them to have full lives. I want them to, yes, study physics, but also study Shakespeare. I want them to know about trigonometry, but also dance. And so to be able to focus for that time on the arts, and the girls picked between photography and choreographed dance and digital art and skit writing and speech making. I got to pick what they wanted to learn about and then dig into it. And then David Oyelowo and his wife Jessica, who's also a actor as well as a classically trained, amazing singer, they were able to get in there and help them with their singing and with their acting and with kind of the arts, and inspire them and say, this is something, just because you're learning to act doesn't mean you have to be an actor, right? Like getting up and giving a speech in front of your class is acting. Getting up and being a doctor and talking to your patients is in a way is acting, and so they learn so much, and just seeing the girls express themselves in a way they never have before and stretch themselves in ways they never had before was a great honor. And it was just great seeing David and his wife interact with them. And I know a lot of our actor supporters are jealous that they couldn't make this trip, but hopefully we'll be able to go back and bring more of them and reach even more girls next time.
Well, Afam, I have to tell you, this is philanthropy on steroids times 10. It's really incredible what you've done. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing so many inspiring stories. To the viewers, I hope that Afam's story will drive you to follow your passion and help others along the way. So Afam, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. It was an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.